Sarah Martinez had always been different from other girls in her small Texas town. While her friends spent their teenage years focused on makeup and dating, Sarah was doing push-ups in her backyard and dreaming of serving her country. Her father, a Vietnam veteran, had filled her childhood with stories of honor, sacrifice, and what it meant to wear the uniform. By the time she turned 18, Sarah knew exactly what she wanted to do with her life. The Navy recruiter's office in downtown El Paso became Sarah's second home during her senior year of high school. She studied every pamphlet, memorized every requirement, and pestered Petty Officer Jackson with endless questions about specialized training programs. Her grades were excellent, her physical fitness was outstanding, and her determination was unshakable. When she finally signed her enlistment papers on a sweltering July morning, Sarah felt like her real life was just beginning. Boot camp at Great Lakes Naval Station tested every limit Sarah thought she had, then pushed her beyond them. The drill instructors screamed. The physical training was brutal, and the mental pressure was relentless. But Sarah thrived in ways that surprised even herself. She graduated in the top 10% of her class and earned the respect of her fellow recruits. Her company commander pulled her aside during the final week and suggested she consider applying for special operations training. The idea of becoming a Navy SEAL had always seemed like an impossible dream to Sarah. Women weren't allowed in the SEAL teams. But in 2016, the military had begun opening combat roles to qualified females. Sarah was one of the first women to attempt the grueling selection process when she applied 2 years into her Navy career. The preparation alone nearly broke her. She spent months training 18 hours a day, pushing her body and mind to their absolute limits. Hell Week arrived like a nightmare made real. For 5.5 days, Sarah and her fellow candidates were subjected to constant physical and mental torture, designed to weed out all but the most elite warriors. Sleep was limited to a few hours total. Food was scarce. The cold Pacific Ocean became their constant companion, as instructors forced them through surf torture and endless conditioning drills. One by one, candidates rang the bell that signified their surrender and walked away from their dreams. Sarah refused to quit. When hypothermia made her fingers so numb she couldn't feel the rope during obstacle courses, she kept climbing. When exhaustion made her legs shake uncontrollably during beach runs, she kept running. When instructors screamed insults designed to break her spirit, she remained focused on her goal. By the end of Hell Week, only 12 candidates remained from the original class of 67. Sarah was one of them. The advanced training that followed was even more demanding than Hell Week. Sarah learned combat diving, underwater demolitions, advanced weapons systems, and close-quarters combat techniques. She mastered parachute jumping, urban warfare, and dozens of other specialized skills that would make her one of the most lethal warriors on the planet. The training pushed her mind and body to places she never knew existed. But Sarah embraced every challenge with fierce determination. After 18 months of the most intensive military training in the world, Sarah finally earned her SEAL Trident. The small golden pin meant everything to her. It represented years of sacrifice, pain, and dedication that most people couldn't comprehend. Only a handful of women had ever earned the right to wear it, and Sarah was proud to be among that elite group. Her graduation ceremony was attended by her parents, who cried with pride as they watched their daughter achieve what had seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Sarah's first deployment took her to Afghanistan, where she served with distinction in counter-terrorism operations. She participated in high-risk missions that saved countless lives and eliminated dangerous threats to American forces. Her teammates, initially skeptical about serving with a female SEAL, quickly learned to respect her skills and dedication. Sarah proved that she belonged among the elite warriors, earning commendations for valor and exceptional performance under fire. After completing her military service with honor, Sarah returned to civilian life with a chest full of medals and memories that would last forever. She enrolled in college using her GI Bill benefits and worked toward a degree in criminal justice. The transition from military to civilian life was challenging, but Sarah was determined to build a successful future. She kept her military achievements mostly private, sharing them only with close friends and family who understood the significance of what she had accomplished. Years passed as Sarah built a quiet life working as a security consultant for various government contractors. Her military background opened doors that remained closed to most people. and she found satisfaction in using her specialized skills in the private sector. She bought a small house in Colorado, adopted a rescue dog named Charlie, and seemed to have found peace after years of intense military service. Her sealed trident hung in a frame in her bedroom, a private reminder of the warrior she had once been. Everything changed on a cold February morning when Sarah stopped at a local coffee shop before heading to work. She was wearing a simple black t-shirt that happened to have a small Navy SEAL logo on the sleeve, something she had received as a gift from a fellow veteran. Sarah thought nothing of it as she ordered her usual coffee and found a quiet corner table to read the news on her phone while waiting for her morning meeting. The trouble started when 3 young men at the next table began making loud comments about fake veterans and people who wore military gear without earning it. Sarah tried to ignore them, but their voices grew louder and more aggressive. One of them, a college student named Brad, had apparently served briefly in the National Guard and considered himself an expert on military matters. He noticed Sarah's shirt and began making increasingly hostile comments about women who pretended to be special forces operators. Sarah remained calm and tried to finish her coffee quietly, but Brad wasn't going to let it go. He approached her table with his friends and began demanding to see her military identification. When Sarah politely declined and tried to leave, Brad blocked her path and accused her of stolen valor, claiming that women couldn't be Navy SEALs and that she was disrespecting real veterans by wearing the shirt. The confrontation quickly drew attention from other customers in the coffee shop. The situation escalated quickly when Brad pulled out his phone and began recording Sarah, claiming he was going to expose another fake veteran on social media. His friends joined in, surrounding her table and demanding proof of her military service. Sarah remained remarkably calm, despite the aggressive confrontation, but her years of military training had taught her to recognize when a situation was becoming dangerous. She stood up slowly and attempted to leave the coffee shop, but the young men continued to harass her. Other customers began pulling out their phones to record the confrontation, and within minutes, someone had called the police. Sarah could have easily handled all 3 men physically, but she knew that any aggressive action on her part would only make the situation worse. Instead, she continued trying to de-escalate, while firmly maintaining that she had every right to wear her shirt and didn't owe anyone an explanation about her military service. When the police arrived, they found a crowded coffee shop full of people arguing about military service and stolen valor. The officers, Sergeant Mike Rodriguez and Officer Janet Chen, had dealt with similar situations before and knew how quickly these confrontations could get out of hand. They separated the parties and began trying to understand what had happened. But the conflicting stories from witnesses made it difficult to determine who was telling the truth. Brad and his friends insisted that Sarah was impersonating a military veteran and possibly breaking federal laws regarding stolen valor. They showed the officers several photos they had taken of her shirt and demanded that she be arrested for fraud. Sarah calmly explained that she was indeed a military veteran, but declined to provide specific details about her service, which was her right under privacy laws. However, her reluctance to share information only seemed to confirm Brad's suspicions in the minds of some witnesses. The situation became more complicated when Officer Chen ran Sarah's identification through the police database and found that her military records were heavily classified. This was actually normal for someone who had served in special operations, but to the officers who weren't familiar with such classifications, it appeared suspicious. The lack of easily accessible information about Sarah's service record made it harder for them to verify her claims on the spot. As the confrontation continued, more people in the coffee shop began taking sides. Some supported Sarah's right to privacy about her military service, while others agreed with Brad that she should be able to prove her claims if she was going to wear military-themed clothing. The situation was becoming a public spectacle, and the officers decided they needed to remove everyone from the coffee shop to sort things out properly. Sergeant Rodriguez made the difficult decision to detain Sarah while they investigated the stolen valor allegations. This was not an arrest, but rather a protective custody situation designed to prevent the confrontation from escalating further. Sarah cooperated fully with the officers, understanding that they were trying to do their job in a confusing situation. She was placed in the back of a police car while the officers continued gathering information from witnesses. The irony of the situation wasn't lost on Sarah as she sat in the police car. She had risked her life countless times serving her country, earned one of the most prestigious decorations in the military, and now she was being detained because someone questioned her right to wear a simple t-shirt. However, her military training had taught her patience and discipline, so she waited calmly while the officers worked to resolve the situation. News of the incident spread quickly through social media as witnesses posted videos and photos of the confrontation. Within hours, the story had been shared thousands of times with hashtags like #StolenValor and #FakeVeteran. Most of the people sharing the story assumed that Sarah was indeed impersonating a veteran, and the online reaction was swift and harsh. The viral nature of the incident put additional pressure on the police to take action. Back at the police station, Sergeant Rodriguez was trying to verify Sarah's military records through official channels. The process was complicated by the classified nature of her service and the fact that special operations records required higher security clearances to access. The Pentagon's personnel office was closed for the weekend, which meant that verification would have to wait until Monday morning at the earliest. Sarah's lawyer, Tom Williams, arrived at the station within 2 hours of receiving her call. Williams was a former military officer himself who specialized in representing veterans, and he immediately recognized the complexity of the situation. He explained to the officers that many special operations veterans had classified records that couldn't be easily verified through normal channels, and that Sarah's reluctance to discuss her service was actually consistent with someone who had served in sensitive positions. Despite Williams' explanations, the pressure from social media and the public attention the case was receiving made it difficult for the police to simply release Sarah without some form of verification. The story had been picked up by local news outlets, and reporters were already calling the police station, asking for information about the fake Navy SEAL who had been arrested. The officers found themselves in an impossible position, caught between doing their job and dealing with public expectations. The breakthrough came on Monday morning, when Williams contacted his former commanding officer, who happened to know someone in the Pentagon's Special Operations Personnel Office. After several hours of phone calls and official requests, they were able to reach Lieutenant Commander James Harrison, who had served as Sarah's team leader during her final deployment in Afghanistan. Harrison confirmed that he would be willing to verify Sarah's service record and speak with the investigating officers. The phone call that changed everything came at 2:30 p.m. on Monday afternoon. Sergeant Rodriguez answered his desk phone, expecting another routine inquiry about the case, but instead found himself speaking with a Pentagon official who wanted to discuss the situation involving Sarah Martinez. The official explained that Sarah's case had come to the attention of senior military leadership, and they were very concerned about how one of their decorated veterans was being treated. Lieutenant Commander Harrison's voice was calm but firm when he spoke with Sergeant Rodriguez. He explained that Sarah Martinez was indeed a legitimate Navy SEAL who had served with distinction in multiple combat deployments. Harrison described her as one of the finest warriors he had ever had the privilege to serve alongside, and he was shocked to learn that she was being detained on suspicion of stolen valor. His words carried the weight of absolute authority and left no doubt about Sarah's military credentials. The conversation that followed was uncomfortable for everyone involved. Harrison didn't hide his displeasure at the situation, pointing out that Sarah had risked her life repeatedly in service to her country and deserved better treatment than she had received. He requested that all charges be dropped immediately and that an official apology be issued for the mistake. The Pentagon, he explained, took any mistreatment of their special operations veterans very seriously. As news of the verification spread through the police station, the officers involved realized they had made a significant error. Sarah wasn't a fake veteran trying to claim credit for service she hadn't earned. She was exactly what she appeared to be, a highly decorated special operations warrior who had simply been trying to enjoy a quiet cup of coffee when the confrontation began. The atmosphere in the police station changed dramatically after Lieutenant Commander Harrison's phone call. Officers who had been skeptical of Sarah's claims suddenly found themselves dealing with a decorated war hero who had been wrongfully detained. Sergeant Rodriguez immediately began the paperwork to release Sarah from custody, while his superiors started damage control measures to address the public relations nightmare that was unfolding. Sarah was released from custody within an hour of the Pentagon verification, but the damage to her reputation had already been done. The viral social media posts labeling her as a fake veteran had been viewed millions of times, and the correction wasn't spreading nearly as fast as the original accusations. Her phone had been buzzing constantly with messages from reporters, friends, and strangers who had seen the story online. Some messages were supportive, but many were filled with hatred and accusations that hurt more than Sarah wanted to admit. The police department called a press conference for Tuesday morning to address the situation publicly. Chief of Police Robert Thompson stood at the podium looking uncomfortable as he explained that Sarah Martinez was indeed a legitimate military veteran who had been wrongfully detained due to a misunderstanding. He offered an official apology to Sarah and her family, but the damage had already been done. The story of her detention had spread much further than the correction ever would. Lieutenant Commander Harrison decided that the situation required a stronger response from the military. He contacted Sarah directly and asked for her permission to hold a press conference at the local Navy recruiting station. Harrison wanted to set the record straight about Sarah's service and send a clear message that the military would not tolerate the mistreatment of their veterans. Sarah initially hesitated, preferring to keep her military service private, but eventually agreed when she realized how many other veterans might face similar situations. The Navy press conference drew a much larger crowd than anyone had expected. Local news stations sent their top reporters, and national media outlets picked up the story as it developed. Lieutenant Commander Harrison stood beside Sarah as he described her exemplary military service, including details about her SEAL training and combat deployments that had never been made public before. His words carried the authority of someone who had personally witnessed Sarah's courage and dedication. Harrison's most powerful moment came when he addressed the issue of women in special operations. He explained that Sarah was part of a pioneering group of female warriors who had broken barriers and proven that courage and skill weren't limited by gender. Her achievements had opened doors for other women who wanted to serve in elite military units, and her legacy would inspire future generations of female service members. The audience listened in respectful silence as Harrison described missions where Sarah had risked her life to save her teammates and protect innocent civilians. The revelation of Sarah's true military background sent shockwaves through social media. People who had shared posts attacking her as a fake veteran began deleting their comments and posting apologies instead. The young man who had started the confrontation, Brad, found himself facing intense criticism for his role in the incident. His university launched an investigation into his conduct, and several veteran organizations condemned his actions publicly. Sarah's story became a powerful symbol of the challenges faced by female veterans, particularly those who had served in combat roles. Women's rights organizations rallied around her case, pointing out that female veterans were often questioned about their service in ways that male veterans rarely experienced. The incident sparked a national conversation about gender bias and how society views and treats military veterans. The legal consequences for the false accusations began to unfold over the following weeks. Sarah's lawyer filed civil rights lawsuits against several parties, including the individuals who had harassed her and the social media users who had spread false information about her service. The cases sent a strong message that stolen valor accusations needed to be based on facts rather than assumptions or prejudices. Perhaps the most significant outcome was the policy changes that resulted from Sarah's case. The Department of Veterans Affairs implemented new procedures for verifying the service records of special operations veterans, making it easier for them to prove their military backgrounds when necessary. Police departments across the country received training about how to handle stolen valor allegations, particularly those involving veterans with classified service records. Sarah used her newfound public platform to advocate for other veterans facing similar challenges. She established a nonprofit organization that provided legal assistance to veterans who had been falsely accused of stolen valor or who faced discrimination because of their military service. Her organization also worked to educate the public about the diverse roles that women had played in modern military operations. The coffee shop where the original incident occurred became an unexpected symbol of reconciliation. The owner, Maria Santos, reached out to Sarah personally to apologize for what had happened on her property and invited her back for a formal ceremony honoring local veterans. The event drew hundreds of community members who wanted to show their support for Sarah and other military veterans. Lieutenant Commander Harrison remained in contact with Sarah long after the press conferences ended. He helped her connect with other female special operations veterans who had faced similar challenges, creating a support network for women who had broken barriers in the military. Their friendship became a bridge between Sarah's military past and her civilian future, helping her find meaning in her post-service life. The young men who had confronted Sarah in the coffee shop faced various consequences for their actions. Brad was expelled from his university and struggled to find employment, as news of his role in the incident followed him online. His friends faced lesser punishments but learned hard lessons about making assumptions and the power of social media to destroy lives. All three eventually reached out to Sarah through her lawyer to offer personal apologies for their behavior. Sarah's case became a landmark example in legal textbooks about civil rights, veterans' issues, and the dangers of social media vigilantism. Law schools across the country used her story to teach students about due process, the presumption of innocence, and the importance of verifying facts before making accusations. Her experience helped shape new legal precedents that protected other veterans from similar harassment. The tattoo that had inspired the title of her story was actually a small seal trident that Sarah had gotten after completing her military service. It was barely visible beneath her shirt sleeve, but a photographer had captured it during the coffee shop incident. The image of that tattoo became iconic, representing the hidden sacrifices and achievements of countless veterans whose service often went unrecognized by the general public. Years later, Sarah reflected on how the coffee shop confrontation had changed her life in unexpected ways. What began as harassment and false accusations had ultimately given her a platform to advocate for other veterans and create positive change in how society viewed military service. She had transformed a negative experience into an opportunity to educate people and protect others from facing similar injustices. The lasting impact of Sarah's story extended far beyond her individual case. It sparked nationwide discussions about respect for veterans, the dangers of making assumptions based on appearance, and the importance of supporting those who had served their country. Her courage in speaking out had created ripple effects that would protect and inspire future generations of military veterans, particularly women who continued breaking barriers in previously male-dominated fields.